annual things. This episode is going to be dominated a little bit by your report, Canada's Food Price Report. Now, that's actually one of the first times you and I started talking together in Montreal, even before I had you on the Voice of Retail, even before we had a podcast together.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
And I want to start that conversation the same way we started our conversation, which is, I know you look backwards, so to speak, and you say, okay, how did we do predicting in food inflation in 2021? And then we'll talk about the tradecraft of the report, because it's kind of coast to coast. It's a big, long project that a lot goes into it. And then we'll talk about the results. But tell us a little bit. Let's start at the beginning, so to speak. What and how did you think about the accuracy or your forecast in this crazy time, notwithstanding everything, for the 2021 report?
Yeah, no, accuracy is a result. We don't, of course, we look at our accuracy rate quite seriously, because, I mean, people, why bother looking at the report if we're never accurate? Right. So the overall category, the food inflation rate that we predicted last year, we were, again, accurate. So we've been accurate 10 out of the last 11 years.
Now, remind me, was it between 4 and 6%? I think it was even more precise than that.
It was 3 to 5.
3 to 5.
3 to 5. And for people who aren't necessarily familiar with forecasting is just not an easy thing to do. I mean, you basically have to look 12 months ahead, and you commit with a report, a very public report. And so not everyone actually is comfortable doing that. Very rarely banks or consulting groups will actually go back in time and say, well, are we accurate or not? So overall, we're pretty much accurate. When you look at specific food categories, things get choppy a little bit. Our accuracy rate is probably around 60% over the years. And this year, so we were accurate for a couple of categories, but we really missed on vegetables. We were, if you remember last year, we were expecting vegetables to go up by 5%. It went down this year. They're cheaper. So we missed out, and we were expecting not a great harvest, to be honest, domestically. We were expecting a weaker dollar. It didn't happen. And so that was a disappointment. And the other categories we missed, we basically underestimated the inflation rate. Dairy is one of them, fruits, and also bakery.
So when we say we estimated, these aren't exactly in any way, shape, or form kind of wild-ass guesses. This is like AI, you collaborate. Talk about the tradecraft, about how you produce the report.
So the way it works is that with 4 universities, each universities will have an opportunity to present their forecasts using whatever technology they want. Some will use econometrics, some will use machine learning. Now, machine learning is starting to dominate what universities are doing. That's been our method at Dal since the beginning, since the report transferred over to Dal about 5 years ago. And machine learning, what it does, it learns. It says machine learning says it's learning with data. The more data you put into the machine, the more it becomes accurate. And so the problem in Canada has always been the quality of the data. And you and I, we spoke about Statistics Canada's accuracy. And
well, you said you didn't even use stats. You went down to the States and used statistics from reports
for
in the
many
US.
years, we actually used the St. Louis Federal Reserve database because we still have question marks related to Stats Can, of course, but that's the only thing we have. And so and when you look at percentages, well, you can still use Stats Cans because you only look at an inflation rate. Right. So that's what we did again this year.
4 universities, so Dal, UBC,
University of British Columbia, University of Saskatchewan, and University of Guelph.
Right.
So, and of course, when I was in Guelph, that's when I started the price report with my good friend Francis Tapon, who's now retired. So we basically wrote our first report as an email, really, because we didn't know it was going to take off.
How long was that ago? Like that first?
12 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, 12 years ago, and it just took off.
And you had was it 100 million impressions from the last report? Like, it's a media
So
feeding frenzy.
Yeah, so last year was our record.
Yeah.
The media reach for the marketing reach for the report last year was 693 million.
Come on, 693 million media impressions.
Yeah, according to our Meltwater report, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And so so our report is out this year.
And it's out today.
It's out today,
Yeah.
and so we're very proud of our report. I have a very solid team, and I'm gonna this year. I want the team to really play a larger role with media. So you're not gonna see me a whole lot this year in front of a camera. I want others.
Hard to believe. I'll see that. I'll see that when I believe
Well, I
it.
mean, seriously, I've done over 1,100 interviews this year.
1,100 interviews.
Yes. So, and most of it was about inflation. So, frankly, it's time. I've said
It's hard to say something new about it after.
That's exactly,
Yeah.
and I think on my team, we have some great people,
Yeah.
and they have a great story to tell, and
Right.
so I'm happy that they'll be able to tell that story over the next 24, 48 hours, because it is intense. Typically, we get about 120 to 150 media requests
Wow.
within 48 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about the 2022 report. What's the forecast? What are the key?
Yeah, so our
call the ball. Or
Yes.
call the chicken, I guess you could say, or whatever. You know?
Yeah, so it, again, consistent with what we've seen in the past years, we are expecting a higher inflation rate, 5 to 7%. So a family of four should expect to pay $966 more.
$966.
Yeah, that would be the highest.
Now, how does that compare to 2021?
So 2021 was what we were expecting was $675.
Okay.
And we missed that mark by $25 approximately. So
So they were paying about $600 more in 2021 than 2020, but in 2022 you expect them to pay more, like
966, yeah. And so we break it down in the last couple of pages of the report. Let's say you live on your own, or you live with one child, or a couple with no child. You can actually reconstruct your food budget. We actually added expecting and nursing moms as well.
That's a great feature. It's like a buffet to choose from, because I always like that about the report, because it allows you to say, well, that's not my situation. I don't have a family of four. What does it mean to me? Where you can kind of go down and choose, well, we're 2 plus 1. And
yeah, I mean, ideally, what would be nice is to actually provide a very granular scenario, like including a vegan. How much does it cost to feed yourself if you're a vegan? If you're a non-gluten person? There's lots of diets out there, right? Sure. And so every year we get requests from people, which is great. And so every year we adapt, we make changes, but as we adapt, it's more work.
Yeah. The report gets longer and longer.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are the key observations? So is there any commodity that's going, we've talked about dairy a lot on this podcast.
Yeah.
I just saw the Quebec Dairy Group also talked about a 4 to 6% increase, which I guess will wash out. I don't understand the difference between provincial and federal, between the two issuings. I guess is one.
Well, at the federal level,
the CDC and the federal level, right?
Yeah, and that's a recommendation. So provincial boards will implement the recommendation.
Okay.
And so each province will actually adjust.
Right.
And in Quebec, there is a push for higher prices. So pressure on food processors is going to be immense in 2022. So we are expecting, you're right, dairy is the big category this year, 6 to 8%. So the dairy sector, the dairy section of the grocery store, we are expecting higher prices. The other one is food service, restaurants. And you know this, we've talked about it. There's going to be some catch up. Labor, we talked about it with Corey a few weeks ago. I mean, we're going to see higher menu prices. I know that the sector doesn't want to talk about the Great Reset, but I think it's happening.
Well, I tell you, one of my upcoming questions, I called it the Ontario Government Smackdown. I don't know if you saw on BNN, but the Ontario Minister of Labour was reacting to some, I don't know what it was about Tim Hortons, but it was chitting and chatting about we can't find anybody. Oh my God, he came on television and said, we'll just pay them more. Like, what's... And I was thinking back exactly to, it was such an unusual thing to do. But
yeah, I know.
I was thinking back to our interview with Corey, who was saying, listen, the system's broken. Like, you can't possibly run a restaurant. And kudos to the Ontario government. They actually eliminated that
food service category
where you made $13 an hour if you were a server below the minimum wage. So kudos to
people who earn tips.
Yeah. Which that anyway.
I think it's the first province to do that.
You know, it's so.
And I think it may set a precedent for other provinces. Absolutely, I think that, and it's a conservative government in Ontario. It really, I think, it attracted a lot of attention outside the province.
Yeah. Well, it's a conservative government. They also passed the same week the right to disconnect law. So they're an interesting group of cats, right? Because you typically wouldn't have a conservative government come on and criticize an employer.
Yeah.
The way, as I said, they kind of smacked them down a little bit. Anyway,
but at the same time, $15 an hour in Ontario is a muted point.
Yeah,
I think because I know a lot of owners, restaurant operators, they've been paying their staff more than $50 an hour for a long time.
Yeah, if you're still paying 15, and I'd imagine it's pretty hard to attract
already.
Yeah. Now
But it's an interesting signal. But you're right. Yeah. Actually, the no tip. Getting rid of the tip category with the minimum wage was really interesting.
It was an interesting week because the president of what's it called, One Fair Wage from the U.S. talked about the amount of people fleeing the industry in the States. And in the States, like the wage is like $6 an hour if you make tips. Like it's just bananas. And it brings up all kinds of not so great things that happen in that industry, and they're just fleeing in the States. I think it's better here. Anyway, we got a little bit off topic. I just want to get back for a minute or two back to the report. So, as a family, we can expect to pay a little bit more for dairy.
Yeah.
Any other things that we think
you're
going to see more expensive?
At the grocery store, dairy's number one.
Yep.
Bakery and vegetables are number two.
What's driving bakeries? That flour and
ingredients. And you may recall Weston Bakeries was sold.
Oh, yeah.
So more consolidation. With consolidation comes higher prices.
Yeah. Sold to a Canadian, and they sold the second piece of their business.
It was a very good company, and that company has been around for a while. Is a good vendor of Loblaws, and so they kind of kept it in the family. But again, less competition. It's a bakery that bought an ethnic bakery, which bought Weston. So to me. At a very high level, it is consolidation. There's one less player. But if there is one company I wanted to buy Weston, it would be FB Brands. Yeah. Absolutely, it's a good company, very family oriented.
You know what? Maybe we should get them on the podcast and talk about their ambitions for the category at some point.
That's a great idea, actually. I've actually had lunch there once with my good friend Paul Ace from Loblaws a few years ago. Yeah. I was hosted like a king. It was these people are so
generous.
They're class acts. Yeah, absolutely. They're immigrants. They come from another country. I believe it's India, and you can feel that they've gone through a lot, and so they're giving back, and they're very generous with their time.
It's like the Paramount Group, the president of the Paramount Group, who gives back is probably one of the amazing. Get him on the podcast too. Okay. These are side notes for the podcast.
That's right. Exactly.
People don't need to hear about this. Okay, so you're going to pay more for those commodities. Anything you're going to pay a bit less for next year? Is there anything going the other direction? Like you said in 2021, fruits and vegetables went down from where you thought.
Well, I mean, a lot of reporters are calling us about meat. Well, I mean, it's not often that you see 2 years in a row of very high prices at the meat counter. So this year, 2021 was a huge year for meat. We don't expect the same thing. We're expecting a very calm year in 2022 at the meat counter. In 2014, the same thing happened. 2014 was a stupid year with meat products, and 2015 was very calm.
Is there any? We've had a couple of great plant-based Zogolos, for example. Is there any dent that the plant-based? Is it a niche, or is it now actually kind of starting to cannibalize, so to speak, some of the meat?
There's still growth in that category, but what I'm concerned about is that Beyond Meat's current downfall is making a lot of noise, and people may think, oh my goodness, plant-based was just a fad.
Right.
I don't think it is. I actually think that plant-based the category itself is only going to grow more in years to come.
Do you see it putting pressure on red meat or chicken or the trifecta to keep the prices down because they've now got competition outside of
the
category?
And prices are dropping in plant-based. The difference between animal proteins and plant-based is shrinking.
It was not always the point, right? I mean, I remember on an episode we were talking about Impossible or one of the vendors, and they were priced all over the map, but it was really expensive, right?
Yeah.
Like it was
even with dairy alternatives.
Yeah.
I mean, some like oat milk, for example, it's getting really affordable. We just bought eggnog, plant-based eggnog with oat milk.
Plant-based eggnog.
Yes, plant-based eggnog, and
I like my eggnog over the holidays.
Yes, I tasted
eggnog.
it. It's actually not bad. It's not. It doesn't taste the same as the eggnog, but it's actually not bad at all. Yeah, I was very, very impressed. So there's lots going on there, but I do think that with vegetable proteins, I don't like the plant-based term because plant-based signifies that beef is not plant-based, but it kind of is. Yeah. If you go out west, and I'm actually going to be in Banff in a couple of days, you can't say the word plant-based because people will say, well, beef is plant-based. Well,
they're not wrong. I mean,
they're not wrong, absolutely. And so that's why.
So is salmon, apparently, from what we've been hearing. By the way, not to
So you got vegetable proteins and animal proteins. That's kind of how I see the
better
two dimensions. Yeah.
Better description.
And by the way, I actually did a taste test. We talked about sustainable blue salmon last week, so I went on a tour and grabbed some sustainable salmon and bought some regular salmon, brought them home, cooked it for my family, and we did a taste test. And the results were pretty compelling. Yeah. So the sustainable blue salmon is $18 a kilo, and the cook one is $11. From the company Cook. Is $11 a kilo. So big difference there. But on taste, oh man, it's not even close. So one is more fatty, even tastes like a cardboard almost. Like it's if you actually eat that product on its own, you're not gonna notice the difference. But as soon as you step over and you try the sustainable blue salmon. Less fatty, lighter, tastier.
Maybe the choice. Like last night, I made a salmon with a curry sauce. So the salmon alone, is very fresh and flavorful. But it had a lot of. It was like a broth soup.
That's right.
Kind of made maybe that's a choice you can make to vary. All right, so before we leave the food price report, where can people get it? Is it? We'll put a link to it on the site.
Yeah, absolutely. So all participating universities will have the food price report on their website. You can actually find a copy of the report on our own website and past reports as well.
Right.
On the Agri-Food Analytics Lab's website. In fact, it's actually on the main page of Dalhousie University as well.